Good evening and welcome to this public hearing of Columbus City Council's Public Service and Transportation Committee. I am Councilmember Eileen Paley, Chair of the committee. I believe I will be joined tonight by another council member, but tonight we will hear from the city's Department of Public Service about the proposed 2014 budget. Public Service Director Tracy Davies will provide information about the department's many services as well as its goals and priorities for the coming years. Welcome, Councilmember Tyson, and thank you for joining us this evening. After we have learned about the service department's budget, we will shift our focus to the recommendations of the Short North Parking Working Group, including 2 ordinances that Columbus City Council will consider at its regular meeting on Monday, December 16th. Before we begin, please be aware that tonight's hearing is being recorded for rebroadcast on CTV, Columbus Government Television Channel 3, and the rebroadcast schedule is available at www.columbus.gov. The Department of Public Service is responsible for many of the services our residents consider essential. The department maintains more than 6,000 lane miles of roadways, including more than 200 bridges, and is responsible for improvement projects like resurfacing and pothole repairs that make traveling in Columbus a safer, more pleasant experience. When the snow falls, as it has in the last couple days, the department's team of snow warriors treats and plows city streets so that Columbus residents can get where they are going safely. Public Service administers the city's refuse collection, yard waste, and recycling programs, and the department oversees the construction of ADA-compliant wheelchair curb ramps. When residents call 311 to report issues with city services, they are calling the Department of Public Service, which coordinates responses with other city departments to make sure that our residents' needs are met. All of this is just some of what Public Service does for our community. To tell us more, we're pleased to welcome Department Director Tracy Davies to the hearing. Director Davies, the floor is yours.
Chair Paley, Councilmember Tyson, thank you for the opportunity to present the highlights of the proposed 2014 operating budget for the Department of Public Service. The Department of Public Service is comprised of the Director's Office, which includes the 311 Customer Service Center, and 4 divisions, including Design and Construction, Mobility Options, Planning and Operations, and Refuse Collection. In 2014, we have proposed funding of $97.8 million for the department. This will fund 842 full and part-time personnel and provide some of the most basic city services, including refuse collection, maintaining and improving our roadways, fixing potholes, plowing snow, installation and maintenance of traffic signals, signage, pavement markings to promote the safety of the general public, publicly managed parking, and making Columbus a safer city for pedestrians and bicyclists. Our proposed 2014 operating budget represents a 2.9% increase in funding over our 2013 operating budget. That increase is in part can be attributed to across-the-board contractual raises and associated benefits, including increased insurance premiums. The bulk collection program will be funded entirely by the general fund in 2014, and an increase of 7 full-time positions in private inspections to perform inspections for compliance on excavation in the right-of-way regarding curbs, sidewalks, ADA ramps, and the pavement repairs for the large utility companies. The Director's Office's 2014 total budget is $6.9 million. $1.75 million of the Director's Office budget funds the 311 Customer Service Center, which serves our residents as the gateway to all non-emergency city services. 311 is staffed with 22 full-time and 2 part-time employees, working 2 shifts between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Residents can also file their service requests with 311 by going online anytime, 24 hours a day, at www.311.columbus.gov. The Division of Refuse Collection's 2014 budget is $32 million. In the Division of Refuse Collection, we will expand the city's residential recycling program to eligible apartment and condominium complexes in March of 2014. Also, recycling and yard waste collection for all residential recycling program customers will be collected on the same day and not on alternating weeks. Collections will continue on a bi-weekly schedule. And while our Division of Refuse Collection is keeping Columbus clean and green, our Division of Mobility Options is making our streets safer for pedestrians and bicyclists, as well as managing parking at our parking meters. The division's 2014 budget is $6.8 million, which consists of $3.2 million within the general fund, $1.4 million within the street construction, maintenance, and repair fund, and $2.2 million within the parking meter revenue fund. The Division of Planning and Operations 2014 total budget is $36.5 million within the street construction, maintenance, and repair fund, with an additional $3.8 million within the motor vehicle license tax fund. The Stormwater Utility Fund will continue to reimburse the SMRF fund for the cost of street cleaning, snow, and ice removal. Street cleaning and snow plowing protect water quality and minimize the burden on the sewer system from debris and ice and snow. In 2014, reimbursement for these activities will total approximately $6.2 million. Finally, our snow warriors have been hard at work battling several snowstorms already this season. Snow operations are funded through the Street Construction, Maintenance, and Repair Fund. We'll begin the 2013-14 winter season with approximately 114 equipment operators, 131 pieces of winter weather equipment. We currently have more than 20,000 tons of salt on hand and additional purchasing capacity of at least 20,000 more tons of salt. Again, this year, our snow warriors are working with an upgraded GPS tracking system that tracks all snow warrior vehicles and what streets they have plowed, including residential streets, and when we have snowfalls of more than 4 inches. The Division of Design and Construction's 2014 total budget is $15.6 million, which includes $4.2 million within the Street Construction, Maintenance, and Repair Fund, and $8.5 million within the Construction Inspection Public Fund, and finally $2.9 million within the Construction Inspection Private Fund. The men and women of the Department of Public Service appreciate the financial support and direction received from City Council. This allows the department to continue our mission of meeting our strategic priorities and providing the most efficient and effective service possible for the citizens of Columbus. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Davies. A couple questions for you to follow up on some of the points that you made. One of the city's most popular programs enacted since I joined City Council has been residential recycling. I'm excited that we plan to expand the program in 2014. Can you tell us a little bit more about the response to recycling in Columbus and how that has influenced our decision to expand the program next year?
Yes. Chair Paley, Councilmember Tyson, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Just like you, the residents of Columbus are very excited about the residential recycling. I'll share a couple of statistics with you. Since recycling came online in June of 2012 through this past February, we've collected nearly 39 tons of recycled materials that were not sent to the landfill. That's more than $2 million in savings and tipping fees. We've also had a cart adoption rate of more than 75% from our residents. What we're hearing from the community, from people in the apartment complexes, in the condominium complexes, is that they would really like to participate in the recycling process as well. Now that we've had residential recycling up and running, we want to enhance it and make it available to those people in the apartments and condo complexes who have 90 or 300-gallon refuse collection service. And it's not just the apartment and condo complexes that we're focusing on. In August, we collaborated with the Short North Alliance for a recycling pilot program for restaurants and bars on North High Street between Broad Street and Lane Avenue. At least 40 businesses are taking part in that pilot program, and it's funded through an EPA grant. The main focus is to recycle glass that the restaurants and the bars might otherwise throw in the trash that would eventually go to the landfill. So we too are very excited about the continual success of the recycling program.
Thank you, Director Davies. You know that one of my favorite things to do every year is to meet and greet our snow warriors at the start of the winter season. and I'm glad that next year's budget continues to support their efforts to keep our streets safe. Could you or a member of your staff remind our listening and viewing audience considering the snow about the city's policies for plowing streets and what residents can do to make our snow warriors' jobs a little bit easier?
Yes, Chair Paley, Councilmember Tyson. Our snow warriors are absolutely the best in the nation, and as you mentioned earlier, they've already been very busy this winter with over 13 inches of snow already falling since November. Our warriors are out there working whenever the snow falls, whether it's night, weekends, or holidays. Just to give a little bit of a background again on our snow plan, when the snow falls, the snow warriors will plow and treat the freeway systems, including State Route 315, 33, and 104, and arterial streets first. Those are the streets with the most traffic and higher speeds. Examples of those would be High Street, Broad Street, Morris Road, Cleveland Avenue. ODOT is responsible for the interstates, I-70, I-71, I-270, and I-670. After the snow warriors finish doing the arterial streets, they move on to the collector streets. Those are the streets that connect the arterial streets to the residential streets. And then finally, if Columbus happens to get snowfall events of more than 4 inches, we go into the residential neighborhoods. They have the lowest volume traffic and the slower speeds, so those are the last we plow should we get over 4 inches of snow. There are lots of things that the residents can do to help us out. Most importantly, we ask residents to slow down when they are driving and make sure there's enough distance between their vehicle and the vehicle in front of them. Maintain a distance of no less than 100 feet behind our snowplow trucks. Avoid passing snowplow trucks because our drivers cannot always see the smaller cars. When possible, park your cars in driveways or parking lots and off streets to give plow trucks more room to plow. Shovel your sidewalk. When you shovel your sidewalk or driveway, do not put the snow in the street if possible. Pile the snow in your yard for everybody's safety. And a reminder for residents to put salt on icy sidewalks and their steps. And most importantly, we stress patience. I know that our residents get frustrated with snow, as do we, but patience is most important. More info can be found on the city's website, or you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter. We do post updates during snow events as to the current status of our snow warriors.
Thank you, Director Davies. Councilmember Tyson, do you have any questions for Director Davies?
No, I don't really have any questions. I want to compliment you on the work that you're doing within your department. I know this is pretty much a continuation budget, except for that our bulk refuse drivers are now being in the general fund, which I think is great for our city, and as coming out of the other fund, and this is going to be important for looking at how the other funds, look at our other funds, the importance of them now being in the general fund. I also just want to thank you for giving the update on the snow warriors. I know we were at a community meeting last night and that topic came up, and certainly we'll pass the information on to Councilmember Paley, but thank you for giving us that update. But lastly, I want to say thank you to your employees, especially from 311, that take those calls each and every day when there's issues and concerns in our community, and that the fine work that they're doing, as well as your other employees, but just want to compliment them. And again, I think this is a great budget, a continuation budget, and thank you for your work.
I only have one more question. In your testimony about the budget, you talked about some new inspectors that you were going to hire. Can you talk about how that will make the department and the city more efficient?
Yes, Chair Paley, Councilmember Tyson. This is a change for us. We're shifting our inspection process. And what we're doing is we're going to have a more intense inspection process for utility companies on larger projects, such as an example would be Columbia Gas as they go into the community and upgrade their gas lines. We want to make sure that we have the availability of an inspector to be on site 24 hours a day if necessary so that they can watch and inspect the project, and I think that will make for a better project for the citizens of Columbus.
Thank you, Director Davies. On a personal note also, I'd like to say that you have been doing a great job since you assumed the leadership of the department in July, and we look forward to another great year from you and your team in 2014.
Thank you.
So I do not believe we have any speaker slips for the budget part of our hearing today, so I'm going to move on to the discussion of parking in the short north. The Short North Parking Working Group has been hard at work for many months, developing recommendations to reduce congestion and overparking in 2 permit parking zones in the neighborhood. Residents and business leaders have come up with a set of recommendations that they believe will help the city address a long-standing problem. I can see that we have several members of the working group here tonight. Would you mind standing up so that our viewing audience can meet the people who have devoted so much time and energy to this process? I see you, Larry, and Miss Pandora. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work to get us to this point. You all have busy lives, and the city owes you the deepest gratitude for taking the time out to tackle this complex challenge. Before we open up the floor to public testimony, we will have a presentation from Randy Bowman from the Public Service Department's Division of Mobility Options. Randy, thank you for your many months of work with the Short North Parking Working Group. And I would also like to thank our representative, Adam Letty, for all his hard work with the Parking Working Group, and Rebecca Barnhart. With that said, the floor is yours, Randy.
It's been a while. Thank you, Councilmember Paley and Councilmember Tyson. Happy to be here tonight. On behalf of Director Davies, certainly like to thank you for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. As you've already acknowledged, we have 2 members of our working group here. I'd also like to acknowledge that we have several city staff members present in the audience who have contributed to or participated in the meetings with the Parking Working Group. You have Mike Sexton in the director's office, who has been essential in helping to manage this process. And I also have several of my staff members, Mike Mercurio, Michael Tran, Keith Kieran, and Daphne McSweeney. They are members of our parking team, and their work has been essential, and also their ongoing work is going to be needed to help implement the parking proposal that's been submitted by the working group. I have just about 9 slides or so to present to the council members tonight, and certainly, as always, we're here to answer questions, should you have questions. So I'd like to give you a little background for the benefit of the council members and the audience. The Parking Working Group this is actually the second incarnation of the Parking Working Group. In August of 2012, Public Service convened a working group. Many of the members transferred over to the second working group, but the work done by the first working group was presented to the city's Transportation Pedestrian Commission in May of this year, and the commission asked that the working group take another look at its membership to make sure it was a balanced membership, and also come back with some refined recommendations. So in June, we'll call it version 2.0 of the Short North Parking Working Group convened, and they have met for about 2 times a month for the last 6 months, and tonight's presentation will cover the work that they've provided. On this version 2.0 of the Parking Working Group, we have 11 representatives from the Short North Alliance, the Short North Special Improvement District, Italian Village Society, Short North Civic Association, as well as several area business representatives and representative of residents in Italian Village. And they've all helped to develop new recommendations to alleviate congestion and find new approaches to the issuance of parking permits in the Short North. The group continues to meet and will help the city implement the new recommendations. The group will also remain active through the completion of the Short North Parking Study, which is commencing this month. The mission of the working group, very simple, four key goals of the working group: be safe, be legal, be at least revenue neutral to the city, and be practical and manageable by the city. Certainly safety is the key, as Director Davies remarked about snow and ice removal. Parking, we want any recommended change to how parking is managed in the Short North to continue to be safe. So no parking in front yards, and certainly no parking facing the wrong direction on their streets. We want parkers to be legal. It's not necessarily a boast, but there are many different ways to get a parking ticket in Columbus. Those parking infractions, as we call them, are all well-intended. I'll give you a couple examples. Don't park in front of a fire hydrant or within so many feet of a fire hydrant for public safety. Don't park within so many feet of a driveway or an intersection or a crosswalk or a wheelchair ramp, again, for safety, for accommodating our various needs of our various users. Revenue neutrality. As Director Davies mentioned in her budget presentation, this division is partially funded. Its parking operations are partially funded out of the parking meter revenue fund. So we're concerned that, of course, any potential change might reduce the revenue stream to our parking team, which we would be very concerned about. And then practicality and manageability of any parking proposal. The city services about 8,000 or so parking permits annually. And the Short North, while they are a very large customer, they're not the only customer. And so we need to be able to service all of our customers at an acceptable level of service. And I think you'll see through the course of this presentation that we have, I think, what I believe to be a very practical and manageable set of recommendations. Meetings. I already jumped ahead. I said that the working group has been meeting about twice monthly. It's actually been 13 times since the beginning of June. They have not only had 13 meetings as a team with city staffers, but they've had numerous meetings outside of the formal meetings where they've worked on homework, where they've met with their constituents, with their boards. And as Councilmember Paley said, this group has invested a significant amount of time. This has been one of the most robustly time-intensive groups that I've worked with in my public sector career. There have been results already out of this working group. I'd like to recap those. To date, the working group has assisted in removing peak hour parking restrictions on 4th and Summit Street in Italian Village all the way up through Wineland Park all the way up to Hudson Street. That was done earlier this year, and that added a couple of hundred peak hour parking spaces to those two streets. The group, through its regular meetings, have posed questions. These folks live and work in the district. They see parts of streets that we may not see on a regular basis. And they've proposed various locations where we might restore some metered parking or non-metered parking. They might see a sign that appears to be out of date, something like that. So ongoing dialogue with the working group has proven to be fruitful for continuing to improve how parking is managed and provided in the Short North. This working group has also contributed to gaining funding through the city, through its UIRF program, Urban Infrastructure Recovery Fund program, for the Short North Parking Study, which again commences this month. The group has also assisted the city with targeted parking enforcement. As part of our regular meetings, the group has brought up questions about, say, they might see a valet operator that might be, say, parking cars on the street, which is not permitted. And as a result of their reconnaissance, we've been able to work with valet companies to get them to follow the rules. Sometimes their employees aren't familiar with all of the rules that we have about valet parking. And lastly, and most importantly, the working group recommended a moratorium on permit parking to City Council, which Council adopted and accepted in September. The moratorium is kind of taking your breath and taking stock of where we are to give the working group as well as the parking study a chance to take a more holistic look at the parking challenges in the Short North. And that moratorium is in effect, and that's one reason why we're here tonight, because a few of the recommendations being made by the Short North Working Group would require an amendment to be made to the moratorium. The moratorium covers a geographical area that is bounded by King Avenue on the north, the railroad tracks east of 4th Street on the east, I-670 on the south, and Olentangy River on the west. This on your screen is a graphic that depicts the boundaries of the area that is subject to the moratorium. Next, I'd like to start going into the proposal that is being recommended by the working group. There are 16 elements of the proposal that culminates 6 months' worth of work, numerous meetings, and all elements of the proposal intended to improve permit parking congestion in the short north. I'd like to say that as a result of the work by the working group, it's been a strongly community-based effort with unanimous support. The working group voted unanimously in November to recommend adoption of the proposed permit parking changes that are before us tonight. In addition, the representatives from the Italian Village Society, Short North Civic Association, Short North Alliance, and Short North Special Improvement District have all received endorsements from their boards on the proposal. Lastly, the proposal was presented to the Transportation Pedestrian Commission in November, which voted unanimously to recommend adoption of the proposal. 3 of the 16 elements of the proposed parking changes will require legislation, while the other 13 elements are administrative in nature. The elements include expanding permit area I. The permit parking proposal recommends that metered parking spaces along Kerr Street and Hubbard Avenue, this would be the west side of Kerr and both sides of Hubbard between Pearl and Kerr, that's a tongue twister, that those meters be removed and replaced with permit area I parking. These meters were installed in 2010 at the recommendation of a parking meter advisory team. And the meters were installed to supplement the lack of available parking for customers. Well, since 2010, the Hub parking garage, which has 250 parking spaces plus, has opened just on the north side of Hubbard. In addition to that garage, there's other developments that are occurring in the short north, which will expand public parking opportunities for visitors. So the working group looked at the metered spaces on these 2 streets and recommended that they be converted to permit parking, because right now I think the table has turned and that customer parking is more widely available. However, permit parking is now the issue that's at hand. There are 21 parking meter spaces on Kerr and Hubbard that are proposed to be converted to permit area I parking. However, that is not a net loss of public parking in the short north. With other changes that are occurring, other additions that are occurring, we will see a net gain of public parking in the coming months. For example, I've already referenced the Hub parking garage. That's garage structured parking. There will be a second garage completed in the short north and expected the end of summer of 2014, next year. That would be the parking garage associated with the Pizzuti development that is at the south end of the short north. The convention center announced late summer, early fall this year their interest in developing another convention center parking garage, and this would be located on the east of High Street, nestled between 670 and Goodale, and that garage would be approximately 800 parking spaces. In addition to the structured parking, the city is looking to expand its metered parking at 3 locations in the short north next year. One would be the expansion of our small metered parking lot that is at the intersection of Pearl and Eden. It's a little triangular lot that is nestled behind the lot that the city has made available to Pizzuti as part of their development. That lot would be expanded by over 24 parking spaces. In addition, the city is, now that the hub is mostly complete, once we restore a northbound bus stop on High Street at Hubbard, there are some spaces north of the bus stop in front of the north end of the hub that we will make metered parking. That's about a half a dozen spots there. And then lastly, as I referenced, that the working group continues to find opportunities, and we have a found opportunity at the intersection of Pearl and Prescott, where we may be able to add a few parking meters there. So just with those three metered locations that I mentioned, they more than make up for the loss of metered parking on Kerr and Hubbard. And all this would be expected to be installed in 2014. The second issue that is prompting legislation to amend the moratorium would be to temporarily expand permit area V. The working group has been looking at both sides of High Street, not just Italian Village. And the working group, upon looking at the list of who has historically received permits, recommended that residents of apartments above the Lemongrass Restaurant at 641 North High, that they be moved from the east side of High Street to the west side of High Street as it pertains to parking permits. For a while, for several years, the residents of those apartments, which are on the west side of High Street, have been eligible to obtain permit area I permits, which would be, of course, the area east of Pearl. To balance parking allocation, the working group recommends that the folks that live in these apartments be able to obtain permits in permit area V, which is on the west side of High Street. And this would be temporarily because working with the Short North Alliance, we understand that the residents of these apartments will be able to obtain parking spaces in the new garage being built with the Pizzuti development. Of course, that's expected to be in operation by the end of summer, so the working group recommends that temporarily allowing the residents of this address of 641 North High to be able to temporarily obtain permit area V permits, but only through September 30th of next year. So ordinance 2930-2013, because the moratorium stops the expansion or creation of new permit parking areas in the Short North through September of next year, to allow for these two elements to proceed, the moratorium would need to be amended to allow the expansion of I and V as I've described. Then the third element that requires legislation is sharing of revenue. The working group supports, in a limited fashion, the continued availability of permit area I parking to some employees of businesses that are nestled between High, Pearl, Russell, and Hubbard. The group has proposed between 36 and 51 permit area I parking permits be made available for the employees of businesses in this area. I give a range because 36 for sure, maybe another 15 if the Transportation and Pedestrian Commission recommends next month approval of a permit parking proposal that's between Summit and Fourth. That petition was submitted prior to the moratorium, and the Italian Village Society has negotiated an agreement with the petitioners for this area, which is nestled around Wonder Bread, for them to allow up to 15 employee permits from the employees west of Pearl, east of High. So the working group proposes that this 36 up to 51 employee permits, that they pay a surcharge, and that surcharge would fund improved, enhanced communications from the neighborhood to its visitors, its employees, and its residents to help reduce parking frustration, to improve the parking congestion in the area. The communications could take the form of website information, could take the form of printed materials such as brochures, could take the form of, say, e-newsletters. Could also take the form of hardscape elements like signage in the public right-of-way that might steer people to a new parking garage or a new parking area. For the city to collect this surcharge and to reimburse the Short North Special Improvement District for these services, the Director of Public Service would need to be authorized to enter into that agreement. And that's what Ordinance 2987, 2013 would accomplish. I would say that a model for this is a similar model already exists. The city already has an established relationship with the Short North SID, where the SID provides an enhanced level of service for maintaining certain landscape and streetscape elements. And so the Ordinance 2897, 2013 was modeled after that existing working relationship. I might also add that the city's reimbursement to the SID would be capped at an amount equivalent to the amount of surcharge fees that would be collected. If only 30 employees obtain permits in the course of the year, then only 30 times the surcharge would be reimbursed to the Short North SID. The actual terms of the agreement are yet to be finalized with the SID. We're working on them on issues such as review rights by the city to review the printed materials, things like that. This slide, just as a reminder about the two geographic elements of that require legislation. Permit Area I points to the streets of Kerr and Hubbard that are proposed to establish permit parking where there presently is meter parking. And then the Permit Area V leader line points to the location of 641 North High Street. I'd like to go over the 13 elements that are administrative in nature. Council members may recall that city code creates the residential permit parking program for the city of Columbus and authorizes the Director of Public Service to establish rules and regulations to administer the city code and to set fee amounts. So the fees for the permits, since its creation, the city has not charged for Permit Area I permits, which would be the only one of the city's 32 permit parking areas that the city does not charge a fee for. After records research, we found that this was done in support of the community by the city to relieve concerns over parking impacts from construction of the convention center. Over the years, the convention center has expanded its parking garages and, of course, is also presently planning another garage, which would be situated east of the cap. So it is our view, including that of the working group, that this free service is no longer relevant, given the nature of the permit parking has been established in the area, and the convention center has established a significant amount of parking for its users. So the working group recommends the city discontinues the free permits to Permit Area I and charge the standard $25 annual fee, which is charged to every other permit area in the city. And this would be to ensure equity and fairness with the other permit areas. It would support the goal of maintaining at least revenue neutrality for the city, and also help permit parking congestion by requiring an investment by permit holders. A permit applicant may think twice about whether they want to apply for one or two permits, given the fact that they'd have to now pay for them. And this recommendation applies to both business employees and residents alike. Limited permits. Last year, over 2,000 permits, which would be in the form of stickers and hang tags, were issued for permits areas I and V to Short North residents and employees. The working group recommends reducing the number of permits to be issued in both permit areas as a principal component in reducing parking congestion in the Short North. Specifically, the working group supports limiting to 2 permit stickers per household in permit areas I and V, limiting visitor hang tags to 1 per household in permit areas I and V, and limiting the number of one-day visitor passes to a total of 100 per year per household in permit areas I and V. This is like you might call a party permit if you're hosting a party, and you could obtain passes for your party guests. 2 more elements, which would be including limiting businesses within permit area I to a maximum of 2 employee hang tags, and removing a business address along West High Street from permit area I. This was Lemongrass. They had obtained 4 employee permits in permit area I, and the group recommends that that be discontinued. When these permit areas were established, neither permit area limited the number of permit stickers per household. Recall that residential permit parking program is community-based. It's a petition-driven effort. The combination of the proposed elements that I outlined previously is expected to reduce residential and employee parking permits in permit areas I and V by about 40%. About half of all households in permit areas I and V will see no change in the number of stickers and hang tags they receive because they receive one hang tag and one sticker. A fifth of all households will experience a reduction in the number of stickers that they receive. Visitor hang tags, a commonly abused and misused permit, will be cut about in half. I used to live in German Village, and I saw my neighbors, they might have 2 cars per household, and they would purchase 1 sticker, and the other resident in that household would just use the visitor hang tag, and that's not what the visitor hang tag is meant for. The working group also supports an appeals process for residents to be considered to obtain an additional household permit sticker or visitor hang tag under extenuating circumstances. In keeping with the community-based nature of the parking proposal, the city is working with the Short North Civic Association and the Italian Village Society on an administrative appeals procedure whereby the associations would review an appellant's request and provide a recommendation to the city. Ultimately, according to our rules and regulations and city code, ultimately the decision to grant an appeal to expand the number of permits per household would rest with the Director of Public Service. In-person registration and renewal. The working group recommends requiring for next year that all residents of permit areas V and I purchase their permits in person, and all business owners and managers purchase employee permits in person each year. Past practice by the city allowed residents to renew their annual permits in areas V and I through the mail, and employees have been able to obtain their permits directly from the city with proof of identity provided by their employer. However, to curb permit abuse, a suspected contributor to parking congestion in the Short North, the working group recommends that residents verify their residency in person, that they provide proof of identification and proof of residency, and that the business owner, not their employees, purchase permits in person. And I might also add that previously the city would issue stickers to employees of businesses. That is recommended to change to be hang tags that would be managed by the business owner and not by the employees. So if an employee left employment with that employer, they wouldn't take the sticker with them on their car. Lastly, on this slide, an improved permit process. The working group recommends that the city requires permit stickers to be affixed to the outside of vehicles and to pursue the online sale of permits. If a sticker is affixed to the outside of a vehicle, it'll be more easily seen by our parking enforcement officers, and that will also help curb abuse, because some people try to photocopy a permit sticker and try to glue it or tape it to their bumper. So this will help us. And then the online sales of permits, that's not something that we can implement right away because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of action that has to happen behind a web page to allow for verification of identity, verification of residency, and just payment processing. So that's something we have agreed to explore further throughout 2014. The city, as a part of improving our permit process, and given the nature of all these changes, we believe it's best and most customer-friendly that we sell parking permits in the neighborhood for employees and for residents in January, so that they don't have to all drive down to Parking Violations Bureau, given the weather the way it's been, we would prefer folks to stay close to their homes and their businesses. And we're working with the members of the working group on locations that will be able to provide on-site sales. We, just for reference, the city has in the past and is currently selling parking permits for the parking areas around OSU. We sell those up on campus on an annual basis. Lastly, on the elements, permits for businesses. I've already recapped a lot of the elements of the parking proposal as it pertains to businesses. However, because of the substantive nature of the parking proposal, we believe it's essential that we work with the Short North Alliance to help communicate the changes to their constituents, and also to help ensure a fair and equitable process for permit sales when they start, sales start in January. So we're happy that Betsy Pandora is here tonight, and perhaps she can say a few more words about that. But we're happy to work with Betsy. And I'd also, of course, mention that Larry Totsky is here from Italian Village Society, and Larry is working on helping us with the appeals procedure for residents in Italian Village. Revenue sharing. I've already mentioned a surcharge that is proposed to be charged to the business employees between High, Pearl, Hubbard, and Russell. I don't think I mentioned the amount. The surcharge is proposed to be $75. That would be on top of the $25 annual permit fee. Lastly, performance monitoring. The working group and the department both agree that monitoring the performance of the parking proposal once it is implemented is important to ensuring improved management of parking in the Short North. As with any substantive change in policy or program, there may be unintended consequences. Regular monitoring of parking utilization, trends in parking enforcement, complaints and observations by the public, and the working group will help assess any tweaks or further changes needed to the program. And I'd also keep in mind that during the initiation of these changes in the parking proposal, that the Short North Parking Study consultant will be present. They will be advising the city and the working group with their professional observations and assessments as they proceed with their parking study. So expectations. I've already provided some numbers of reduction in permits that we believe will help improve parking congestion in the neighborhoods in the Short North. We believe also that there has been some amount of abuse of permits, either selling to someone who doesn't live or work in the Short North, or copying, or things like that. So we believe that the elements of the proposal will help curb abuse of permits. Certainly improve communications by virtue of the fact that we have a working group that is community-based, that represents businesses and residents. We've already improved communications. However, with all the changes that we're talking about, it is essential and vital that the members of the working group continue to help communicate with their constituents and with their boards the changes, as well as help gather complaints or concerns or issues and help resolve those with the city. I might say that during the implementation of the parking proposal, should we have a complaint or a concern by a permit parking customer, they can certainly contact the city through its 311 call center by either emailing or phoning the call center. They can also email me or telephone me. My email address is rjbowman@columbus.gov, and my desk number is 645-2464. And if I can't answer a question, I'll certainly provide that to my staff to help get an answer. And of course, I also encourage constituents to voice their concerns or questions or problems with their working group members, their representatives. So if you're a business employee, talk to your boss and have your boss talk to Betsy Pandora. If you're a resident of Italian Village, give Larry Totsky a call or any of the other members from the Italian Village Society. If you're in Victorian Village, please call Chet Reidenauer. Chet's with the Short North Civic Association, or call Jeff Smith, who is the chair of the Short North Civic Association. Lastly, these are not the end-all improvements to parking. I think through the course of this parking study, we're going to find other opportunities to further help and aid parking congestion in the Short North. So we expect that there will be further evolution of parking management in the Short North. So where do we go from here? There are two ordinances before City Council for City Council's approval. Should those ordinances be approved, then we will next notify permit customers of changes that are coming, and we'll do that in concert with the various working group members so they can help e-blast out information to their constituents. We'll also put a lot of information on our city's website so that people can read the information in their leisure. We will provide on-site permit sales in January. Communications will be ongoing from starting in January, and once the funding has been collected from the surcharges, then we'll be working with Betsy and her team on how they can further up and enhance the communications on parking in the Short North after January. And of course, monitoring and the parking study will be ongoing through the spring and the summer. And an element, I didn't say this, but an element of the proposal is that we examine the performance in a more formal fashion with the working group in 6 months' time. So come June, July, we will be providing objective information to the working group. But that we're not going to wait for 6 months. We're going to continue meeting with the working group. We'll be seeing them on a regular basis. So just like a performance appraisal for a staff member, we're not going to leave any surprises to the time that we meet once or twice a year. We'll be having ongoing conversations with the working group. That concludes my presentation, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. I had a list of questions, but you answered every single one of them. So I don't have any more. I would like to state that if there is communication issues, which I don't anticipate there will be, you also can contact my office through Rebecca Barnhart or Adam Leddy. So I anticipate that Mr. Bowman and his staff will handle this along with the working group, but in case needed, added personnel are needed, I'm always welcome to do that. Before we begin with public testimony, are there any questions or comments from Councilmember Tyson?
Thank you, Chairwoman Paley. And just want to say congratulations on this. I know you spent a lot of time and effort working with the working group to ensure that we have adequate parking in the Short North area. And I want to say thank you to the Short North Working Group, as well as I know this has been approved by the Transportation and Pedestrian Commission. I'm looking forward to, I'm sure the council support these changes that with the technology process, that's going to be important in the future to be able to use technology to be able to get the permits, but I know you have to first work through the whole process to do that. Certainly appreciate the customer service, and that's going to be great to be in the neighborhoods and be able to provide them with that level of support. So I'm excited about that part. And then lastly, I would agree that communication is going to be key because there are a number of changes that are going to take place. And with that, and then continue to monitor the situation so that it can be a smooth transition for all, and everyone seems to be pretty happy with the additional parking spaces for the residents and the businesses. So thank you all for all the work that you've done. Thank you.
At this time, we will entertain public testimony Our first speaker is Betsy Pandora. Please come to the podium, and when you reach the podium, please state your name, address, and any organizations that you represent, and you will have 3 minutes to testify.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Paley and Councilmember Tyson, for holding this hearing tonight. I'm Betsy Pandora. I'm the Executive Director of the Short North Alliance. My office is at 21 East 5th Avenue. And, as you can see, this is a fairly complex set of recommendations, and a lot of thought and time and energy has gone into this. The Short North Alliance does support these recommendations. And one of the things that you may recall from when the clerical error was discovered by the city that resulted in the overissuance of permits in this area to both residents and businesses was that in correcting the error, they had considered not allowing businesses to have access to permit parking. And through an incredible amount of collaboration and work, we're able to allow for businesses to have this important access. The Short North is one of the most exciting and vibrant areas of the city. We have an incredibly important small business community, and so allowing businesses to still have access to parking in the permit area is very meaningful to how they conduct their business. So we are excited to see this go forward and recognize that it is a temporary solution, and have a parking study set to begin here in just a couple weeks, and really view the parking study and all of the work with the assessing this process over the next 6 months or so will really come up with what we think will be meaningful solutions going forward as we think about the overall vibrancy of the neighborhood. So thank you so very much, and we look forward to seeing it go forward next week.
Thank you, Ms. Pandora, and for all your hard work on this committee. I know that you've even hosted the location, gotten up early and gotten in there and let everybody in, because I've joined you on at least one occasion. So thank you for all your hard work and for all your hard work you do for the Short North and for this city. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Mr. Larry Totsky. Mr. Totsky, could you please approach the podium? Please state your name and address and any organizations you represent, and you will have 3 minutes to testify. Thank you.
Good evening, Council Members Paley and Tyson. Thank you for holding this hearing. My name is Larry Totsky. I serve as the president of the Italian Village Society and have been a member of the working group, and I live at 19 East 3rd Avenue in Italian Village. I want to comment just briefly on the cooperative effort that is taken to put this recommendation together. I want to thank the city, Director Davies and her staff, for their willingness to convert 21 metered parking spaces to permit parking spaces. That has really helped add more parking in the permit area. I want to thank the residents as well for their willingness to offer 36 spaces in their permit zone to the businesses, as Betsy just said, and also for their willingness to limit the number of permits and hang tags that they will get, so that we can reduce the total number of vehicles that are eligible to park in this zone. And I want to thank the business community for their willingness to accept the subzones that we are creating, so that not all of the businesses' vehicles park in the one area closer to their business, but so they are dispersed throughout the zone. That will help. And also for their willingness to pay $100, $75 of which comes to the Special Improvement District, so that they can improve communication and other interests in parking. I think this cooperative effort has been really a joy to work through, and hopefully it'll help set precedents in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Totsky. I want to thank you also for all your hard work you've done with this committee and for your community. It's people like you that put the us into Columbus, Mr. Totsky. I want to thank all of the speakers who took time to join us tonight. What I've heard at this hearing is that this city and the community have undertaken a thorough and public process to discuss how we can address a very real challenge in one of our city's greatest neighborhoods. While parking is an ongoing challenge in a successful urban district across the country, it sounds to me as though the recommendations of the Short North Parking Working Group will help to reduce congestion and overparking in the neighborhood. We have heard next year there will be a major parking study that will help us identify challenges and opportunities to improve the situation in the Short North. We also have several garages coming online to help reduce the neighborhood parking challenges. And I am confident that The department and the public will remain engaged in coming months as the larger study moves forward. The city will certainly need the help of residents and businesses to get this important work done, and I cannot stress enough how grateful we are to everyone who has given so generously of their time and talents to serve on this group. Once again, council will consider ordinances 2397-213 and 2930-213 at its regular meeting on Monday, December 16th. Before we conclude tonight's hearing, I would like to thank Public Service Department Director Tracy Davies and her entire team, Randy Bowman and the Division of Mobility Options, who have been working on this issue for some time now, and the civic and business leaders who worked so hard to develop these recommendations. My staff, Rebecca Barnhart, Nancy Solly, and Adam Leddy from Council's Communications Office, and the hard-working team at CTV who make these hearings possible. And finally, the residents of Columbus who make our city the best place in the country to live, work, and raise a family. Thank you, and this hearing is adjourned.